Hey folks, can everybody see and hear me? Please raise your hand if you can. Okay, great. So you might have noticed by now that I am not your regular teacher. He could not make it tonight, so I will be teaching this class for tonight. My name is Miss Saunders. Um, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I hope you all are having a great time recently with whatever it may be you do. So we're going to continue with 123D design for today. I know that you all worked with the Raspberry Pis on Monday, but we're going to go back to 123D for today since the lab was centered on the Raspberry Pis. So does anybody have any questions on anything you've done with 123D design so far? I know it's been about a week since you've done it, so might be a little bit rusty. Okay, doesn't look like it. We'll continue with what you were working with 123D design then. I can't remember, did you all get so far as to make the Death Star? Can anybody verify or not verify if y'all have gotten that far? We have not gotten that far. Okay. I'm just going based off the YouTube video. Y'all have seen extrude and sweep and revolve though, correct? Or not correct? Alright, you're having trouble? What are you having some trouble with? With joining the webinar? What's the problem? While you're typing that, for everybody else, go ahead and open up 123D Design. We're going to go over a whole bunch of stuff today and probably get a little bit into 123D Make, which is going to be pretty exciting. So, yeah. So I'm assuming y'all are somewhere around this area with the extrude, sweep, revolve. That's where I'm going to start. If you haven't done that yet, please let me know ASAP so I'm not confusing the life out of everyone. So we went over a whole bunch of stuff last class, or you and, was it Mr. D, I think, did? And we haven't yet? Alright. That's weird. It says number is invalid. Are you referring to the number to call in? Because I'm not sure why you need to call in if you're here. Other question, you're still not familiar with it. How far did you get then, I wonder? Have y'all done anything with patterns? You think so? Okay. I guess Mr. D might have gone a little bit quick on this then. Alright. I'll just go ahead and start at the beginning of this lesson then. Again, please let me know if I'm going over something in depth that you've already gone over. So if you don't have it open already, I do want you to go ahead and open up 123D and start with just a good old box on your plane. So as a reminder, to make a box on your plane, you will need to not click on primitives, but hover over primitives and go down to insert a box. We're going to be messing around with this box a little bit, so that's why we're not doing anything too crazy, too fancy right now. But we're going to start with patterns. So patterns, the menu for patterns is this 4 cube sort of in a square sort of shape here. There's a couple different options within patterns that we'll be using. The first is going to be the rectangular pattern, which is the first option here. So when you click on rectangular pattern, 2 options are going to pop up. The first of which is solids. This option, for every one of these options in the pattern menu. Okay, you got it then? Awesome. These options, or the solid option, like every solid option in the pattern menu, will be the solid that you would like to create a pattern of. If you double click your box, it will select all of it. And at this point, you're able to click on directions. Now the directions are based off of edges. So when I say that, I mean if you click on one edge, you will be able to make a pattern perpendicular to that edge, so coming out of that edge at a right angle, or parallel with that edge, so going along with it. You're also able to specify the distance and the number of objects you're wishing to create. And you are also able to use the rectangular pattern. Well, this is not going to work for me now. You are able to lift things off the work plane this way. So go ahead and give that a try. Getting used to the pattern to make patterns will help you out with the next couple of patterns that I will go over. So I'll give you another minute or so to check that out before we continue on. Since I'm not familiar with you all, if I am going too fast or too slow, definitely tell me so that I'm not leaving y'all in the dust. I really want to help you learn, not to be a mean teacher who won't help you out. Alright, I'm going to go on to the next pattern, which is the rectangular pattern. So once again, we're going to start with just a good old normal box on your screen. And we're going to work with the circular pattern, which is the one directly to the right of the rectangular pattern. The circular pattern does the same thing as rectangular, except it involves what we call an axis of rotation. So in this case, our axis of rotation could be a lot of different things. On our box, the box has a bunch of nice edges that we can easily use to rotate about. So let's go ahead and just try that. What we're going to do is go to the circular pattern. Once again, we're going to check that our solid is completely, has been completely selected. But when we choose our axis, there's a couple different options we could use. Our mouse is saying we can select a grid, a face, or a line to refer as an axis, that means we're able to actually draw lines to serve as an axis. Since I'm not talking about polylines quite yet, which is the way you draw lines, I won't do that, and instead I'm just going to use one of these edges of the box as our axis of rotation. So when we click on it, what should pop up is something like this. Our default is to make 3 different boxes, or is to make 2 copies of the first box so that you have 3 in total. And they will be evenly spaced around the axis of rotation. So they're going to be evenly spaced around that line you just clicked. This is called a full circular rotation, meaning that the boxes are perfectly evenly spaced around this axis, but we don't always want that to be the case. On this dialog menu that pops up, if we click on it and change from full to angle, we can manually set the angle that our boxes are apart from each other. So it doesn't go all the way around when you have angle selected, it just goes however much you would like. Like I said, we can also revolve around faces of objects. I'm not going to really spend any time on this. This is just something that you can explore on your own time. But there's all sorts of different things that you can revolve about. You just have to make sure that you define them appropriately. So my favorite pattern option to use is the very far right one, called mirror pattern. The mirror pattern isn't so much a pattern as it is literally a mirror. It lets you take geometry from one side of the mirror and duplicates them on the other side. This is really nice to use because you only have to draw half of an object that is symmetric. And it's really clever to use. I'm sure people would give you some, if you were to do this. So last class, did you all end up making a cat? Did y'all draw that cat in 123D? Okay, so you did do that. Excellent. I hope you enjoyed looking at my cat, because that black cat is my cat. That was on the PowerPoint. We're actually going to replicate this, except we're going to do it using the mirror command. So notice that if you were to draw a line halfway across the cat's face, it would be entirely symmetric. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 whiskers on each side. The nose is not symmetric, but we don't have to worry necessarily about the symmetry of that. Yeah, I know you already made it, but we're actually going to do it again, but using the mirror pattern command. So the way that we started our cat was via a sphere for its head. So we don't need this box on here anymore. I am going to go ahead and make a sphere as well now. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. I want you all to change your view so that you're looking at your sphere from the top down. So remember, just go to the navigation plane and select top. This is going to be one of our first forays into sketching. So if any of y'all are familiar with Tinkercad, if you've taken classes with us before, we use that a lot. The problem with Tinkercad is that it only uses these primitives to make objects. More advanced CAD programs will let you take 2D sketches and make them three-dimensional. Alright, there's a process to doing that, but we won't be worrying about that quite yet. We do want to go into the sketch menu and scroll over, it's going to be the 5th option, scroll over to Polyline and go ahead and click on it. The reason it's called Polyline is because you define the endpoints by clicking, and so it makes many lines at once. Polyline. When you use Polyline or any of the options in the sketch menu here, you'll need to define where you want to draw your sketch first. So before you do anything, you'll need to click on the work plane. Anywhere you can click and it'll be fine. We're just saying, hey, I want to draw it on this axis. So it's really helpful to look at what your cursor is saying. Like right now it's saying click to specify the first point. That's exactly what we want to do. Specify the first point of our line. We're looking for a point about halfway in the center of our sphere. So let's make it easy on us and start at one of these grid lines here. So click once to start it. And draw your line. You don't have to click or you can just you don't have to click, you can move your mouse around. Let's just draw it straight down to another grid line. And click again. Now we don't want to do another point. We don't want to have to draw another point here. So once we're done, we can click the green check to exit the sketch command. So what we should have on our screen now is our sphere and a line going directly underneath it. I'm going to give you a second to do that real quick. I will ask you to raise your hand once you've done that. I just want to make sure that you get a good baseline of this mirror tool here. Because it literally lets you do half the work and it's wonderful. So I do see a question. You don't see how to do the line? Alright, so to do the line, you want to change your view to a top view using the navigation pane. I'll delete my line just for now so I can show you. It's going to be in the sketch menu. It's to the right of the primitives menu. We'll go to the 5th option here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be Polyline. We click once to tell the program we want to draw on the work plane, which is just the one we've been drawing on. And we want to start our line roughly halfway across the sphere. We click once to start our line. Click twice to finish our, or not to finish it, but to set that end point, and then click the green check to exit. So at this point, what we're going to do is start drawing the cat just like we did last time. So let's start by making one ear. I'm going to make mine a radius of like 3 and a height of 5 maybe. Got to remember to move it so that it's inside the head, not just sticking off of it. Once you've got it placed well, we can hit enter to finish. So here's where we can start using the mirror pattern. Let's go into the patterns menu and click on mirror. And once again, we have a little dialogue that pops up saying solids and then mirror pane. We want solids to be in the dark gray. The solid is the one that we would like to mirror. We want to mirror the ear for now. We can then click on mirror plane and click on the line that we just made. Oh, why did I do that? If we do that correctly, a red box will appear around the line you made. This line is, or this red box is acting like a work plane, and it lets us mirror our ears. Now, if y'all just saw what I did there, there was sort of a bizarre error that said invalid operation. That's been happening occasionally to me, and I have not figured out the cause of it. If it does that, try the mirror function again. That's still something I need to research. I'm not totally sure why that's happening. So that's the process of mirroring. It won't stop doing the invalid operation for you. So it used to start working for me when I clicked the line along the front of the animal. So if I clicked it back here, it would not work out, but it was working up here for me. I suggest them just to try it a couple more times. I really, really genuinely wish I could figure out why it was happening. If it did work out for you though, you can finish the rest of the cat's head that way. So, eyeball, and whiskers, and so on and so forth. Once you've selected the line, it should just immediately show up on the other side. If it doesn't, try hitting enter. I do want to give you a minute to try using the mirror pattern to duplicate the cat you made before. Raise your hand and keep it raised if you have done it. See a question. The air still won't go away. I really am not sure why it's happening. Let me see something here. See if this fixes it. Try selecting the object you're trying to mirror before you go into the mirror pattern menu. So click mirror pattern, your solid's already selected, and then mirror plane. I can guarantee you though that the error is not your fault. It's been an issue that I've been having as well. Okay, so it works to be selected first. Great. I don't know why it does that. It shouldn't have to do that. I think it's just an error in the software. So, if you're done or not, that's okay. We're going to continue on. I just want to make sure that everybody can sort of see how that works. It's very handy. You have to do like half the work. Can't complain about less work, right? Engineers are real lazy. This is included. So if we try to move the head of our animal that we've gotten made right now, this is obviously a very simple version of it. What happens is that the head moves, but all the other stuff will stay the same. But we can fix this by going to a new menu. It's going to be to the right of the pattern menu. It's called grouping. And this menu has 3 different options: group, ungroup, and ungroup all. I want you to take a wild guess as to which of these options will make this head all together. Make this head stay all together as one. Is it going to be group, ungroup, or ungroup all? Yeah, it's going to be group. There actually isn't a group all. That's a different option, which will be gone over later. It's going to be group. Yeah, you have to manually group everything together, but you can ungroup everything at the same time, which is nice. But yeah, what we can do we go into the group menu and hit group, we can select everything that we'd like to group. Or we could just select all. This looks a lot like Jigglypuff, come to think about it. Cool. But now it's all grouped together, which is lovely, so you don't have to worry about messing anything up now. So if you don't want that to be the case, you can also ungroup. If you have a whole bunch of different groups and you don't want either of those to be grouped, you can hit ungroup all. You're mostly going to be using group and ungroup though. So we may have or may not have discussed one of the options on the right hand menu that says grouping while snapping. I do want you to turn this off, so make sure that the big old line is going through it. I'm going to go over snapping in just a second, and if you have grouping while snapping on, then it's not going to work very well. It's not going to be as fun of a lesson. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, if you've drawn a masterpiece and you'd like to keep it, you should save your cat right now. Otherwise you can delete it or keep it on your plane, doesn't matter. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to do a poll to see how I'm doing today. Or actually, never mind, I guess we don't have that option. We're not going to be using the Raspberry Pi today, no. Oh, I got 2 questions about that at the same time. That's crazy. So the next thing we're going to talk about is snapping. So on your work plane, I want you to draw 2 primitives. One's going to be a box and one's going to be a cone. So the snap option, which is this magnet, is really nice because it lets you put 2 objects directly on each other's faces. So if we click on snap, our mouse will say, "Well, select the faces of the solid to snap." We're going to change our view to make sure that we select the cone's bottom first. And then the cube's head second. If we've done that correctly, what will happen is the cone will move on top of the cube. Now, order is very important when we do this. It's not like we can just snap it at will. Let me show you. Instead of picking the cone first, we'll click on the top of the cube and then the bottom of the cone. So if we do it in the wrong order, the work plane, or the box will be under the work plane. So we have to be kind of careful when we do that. So that was a little aside. We are going to go back to patterns for right now, and we're going to discuss the last kind of pattern option, which is the path pattern. So we talked about rectangular patterns, so we can make patterns along lines, make it like a rectangle. We talked about circular patterns, which let us make patterns about an axis. A path pattern is sort of a more free-form version of these. These patterns will follow along a path that you designate. So we can use the sketch functions to draw a path, or we can draw it based on existing geometry. So we could use an edge as a path, for example. But we're not going to do that right now. What we're going to do instead is make sure your work plane is totally clear, minus a cube. And just like we did before, we're going to go into the sketch menu and sketch a polyline. So we do want to work on this work plane here, so we click on it to start. It tells us to click to specify a first point. Let's do it sort of underneath this box here. And then just draw some weird random set of lines until you're satisfied, and then you can exit the Polyline menu. When we're using path pattern, just like before, we click our solid to select it to be patterned. But this time, instead of choosing an axis or an edge, we're going to choose a path. The path is going to be the crazy line we just drew. So even though it's not an organized pattern, it's still repeating the same thing you drew, but on the path that you indicated. So it's pretty cool stuff. I had someone in my other class draw a pretty cool looking pearl necklace using the path option. So this is really handy. It really saves you a lot of work in the future. That's the only reason I'm spending so long on it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about sketching now. We've been making all these shapes using the primitives option. It's very easy to do if we have something very simple, but not every object that we'd like to design is going to be this simple, right? So we actually have to use what's called, or we have to use the construction menu to do such a thing. Construction menu is right in the next of sketching, but trust me, we'll use sketching in a second here. There's a couple options in the construction menu that we will be using. Extrude is the first one. So extruding, what it does is makes a two-dimensional object three-dimensional. Alright? So if we took one of these options in the sketch menu here, draw a quick rectangle, and go to construct and extrude, if we click on it, we can make it bigger or smaller. So the extrude option is just like the rectangular pattern, except it doesn't make many copies, it just makes it longer. It adds volume to it. So I want you to think of extrude as sort of a similar rectangular pattern. Revolve is also very similar to the patterns in terms of the circular pattern. It works the same way in that you have a sketch that, when revolved around an axis, it becomes three-dimensional. So now I got Pac-Man. Sweep is just like path pattern. In that it will extrude your object around a path. So what just happened here is a little bit weird. You're probably like, whoa, where did everything go? So let me show you what happened there. So I selected the profile, which is a two-dimensional object, which is the face of this box. The path is the same path. You see this really weird red snaky thing coming along. If you look at this dialog menu up here, if we hover over the rightmost side, it will say subtract, which means that all this red stuff is going to cut away all the boxes I previously had on my path. So let's see what happens if we try merge instead. Now we just have a big old mess. What about intersect? Intersect only. Actually, let me show you what it looks like finished. It only keeps the points that both of these objects intersect. You probably won't need to use that much, so I'm not going to spend much more time on it, but a little bit of crash course, I suppose. So I know it's a lot of information and I did it really quickly. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask me right now, because we're going to do we're going to make something in just a second here, using the sweep option as well as the sketch option. Don't be afraid to ask me, I'm really not going to bite or anything. Alright, so what we're going to be doing next is making an Allen wrench. So if y'all are familiar with Allen wrenches, they're little wrenches that have a hexagonal cross section, which means that if you were to cut it, it would look like six different, or it would be a six-sided polygon. So it would look like a hexagon if you were to cut it in half and look at each side. So you see that right here? So to do this, we're going to have to do something a little bit funky. So far we've been working on the default work plane. So we've been working just on this plane. Everything we draw sits on here. But what if we wanted to do something that looks like this, where we have, you know, an object off of the work plane? What if we wanted to sketch at a 90-degree angle to the work plane? It's a little bit tricky what you have to do, but it's not difficult or anything. It's just you have to explore. So once again, I want you to start with a good old box on that there work plane. So go to primitives and box. It does not matter the dimensions of your box or anything. I just want you to put a simple box on here. So if we go into the sketch menu, we're going to want to make a polygon, but make sure it has 6 sides. The first step to do this is to select the plane that we want to work on. So far we've been only drawing on this plane, like I said, but let's see what happens if we hover our mouse over one of the sides of the square. Well, that's a little weird, isn't it? It says to click to select sketch, and the entire work plane changes. When it does that, it means that we're drawing in a different work plane. We're not drawing flat, we're drawing vertical now. So let's click to specify the center point of the polygon and make a radius of 7, and then hit enter. You can then type in the number 6, which will be in a menu somewhere around your screen. I don't really know where it'll be, because we want it to have 6 sides. Just like the polyline, we click on the green check to exit. And also note you can move your box wherever you want it to be moved now. We're not going to need the box, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. But now if you move your work plane around, you can see that you have drawn completely perpendicular to this work plane. So we've made that nice cross section of the box now, or of the Allen wrench now. So as I mentioned earlier, we will be using the sweep pattern, or the sweep construct option. With sweep, we need an object, but we also need one more thing to extrude our object. Does anybody remember what I said about that? We have an object, we have to extrude it along a Any ideas? I just got done talking about this. A path. Yes, you got it. Perfect. So we're going to need to draw a path to make this look a little bit, more like, hey, an Allen wrench. So it's going to be a little bit funky here how we have to do it. So what I'll ask you to do to make it easier to see is to change your view to the top view, just like we did when we drew our cat earlier. And you'll notice that this time your top view looks just like a line. Because remember, this is a two-dimensional shape here. It's just going to look like a line from one of these dimensions. And once again, we're going to draw a polyline underneath it. We'll need to click on the grid to get this line started. When you click on this grid though, make sure you do not click on the sketch. You want to click just anywhere else but on this line. We can start our first point. Let's just do it roughly at the center of your line. And I want you to make a 100mm long line. At an angle of 180 degrees. This is going to be our long side of the Allen wrench. So I see a question here. Could you repeat the part about the 2D figure? Yes, definitely. Do you want me to start about, where do you want me to start? I'm sorry. There's a lot of stuff about the 2D figure. Do you want me to show you how I made it coming out of the ground, or do you want me to show you, or yeah, just tell me what you want me to show you. Because all I've done after I've drawn this, how you make it coming out of the ground. Okay, I'll show you one more time how to do that. We'll actually need to start with a box. We'll need to go into the sketching menu and scroll over to Sketch Polygon. If you move your mouse around without clicking anything, you'll see that the work plane, you know, that grid, does change depending on where your mouse is. I want you to click on one of the walls of the cube. Which will change your ability to draw so that you can only draw on this grid. So one thing I didn't mention earlier actually is that you don't have to draw it on the box itself. You can draw this six-sided polygon wherever you want. Once you've drawn it though, you can click the green check to exit, and now you have an object coming out of the ground. Or a sketch coming out of the ground, I should say. I opted to delete my cube to make it easier for y'all to see. And then I changed my view by clicking on the navigation cube until I selected top, because I want to be looking at this object from the top down. Just like with the cat, I'm going to create a polyline for our center point here. I'm going to start it about halfway across the length of this hexagon. I'm going to make it 100 millimeters long at 180 degrees. And then one more line 50 millimeters long at 90 degrees. And then hit the green check. Yes, the dimensions for the second line, let me see where I have it on here, that'll probably be nice. Nope, that's wrong. 50 millimeters long at a 90-degree angle. So your first line is 100 millimeters long at a 180-degree angle. Your second line is 50 millimeters long at a 90-degree angle. So from here, I've already sort of gone over it, but it's okay, because I'm going to tell you again. We're going to go up to the Construct menu and scroll over to Sweep. What we'd like to do is to pull this hexagon along this path to make our Allen wrench. So what we're going to do this, after we go into the sweep command, profile will be sort of more grayed out, meaning that you've selected it. Our profile is going to be our hexagon. We're just going to click on it once. And just like with the path pattern, our path is going to be the polyline that we drew. And immediately when you click it, it should become three-dimensional. You should have a decent looking Allen wrench here. Does anybody want to see that again? Alright, I'll show you that one more time. So remember, we've got our hexagon and we've got our path here. This hexagon, we're going to call it a profile because we're going to stretch this hexagon all the way along this path. So one more time, getting close to the end of class here, so I'll just show it once more. I'll upload this afterwards so you can see it. We'll go to the Construct and then to Sweep. The profile is going to be our solid. It's going to be, not our solid, our sketch. It's going to be this hexagon. We go to click on path. The path is going to be where we extrude it along. We can click on that line we made. So that said, we are about out of time. I know that we went a little bit quick there at the end, and I'm sorry about that. If you need to go, you're free to go. I will be here for questions just for a couple more minutes. Thanks so much for coming out tonight and dealing with a new teacher for a day. But I hope you enjoyed it. So if there are questions, go ahead and ask. If you don't have any, you're free to leave, and I'll get this up onto YouTube in a couple minutes here.